Welcome to episode 8 of Meynell TV, the final episode in series 1. This week I'm going to bring a little bit of joy, thinking and knowledge into your lives. It really annoys me, this constant rhetoric I'm hearing at the moment about how children have to catch up, as though school and education is the most important thing. It's not. Children don't need to catch up on their education. They may not have been present in school for 3 months, they might not have been taught for 3 months, but that doesn't mean they need to catch up. Evidence from around the world, the hurricane in New Orleans, the tsunami and earthquakes in Japan, the earthquake in Christchurch in New Zealand, have all meant children missed months and months of school. And test results show that the children who missed school were at no disadvantage compared to those who attended school, weren't in the affected areas. So when people are talking about catch up and ranting about how important it is for children to be back in school because, oh, they've missed English lessons, oh, they've missed maths lessons, is really, really quite ridiculous. Children do need to catch up. They need to catch up on social interactions with their friends. They need to catch up on relationships with trusted adults. They need to catch up on their lives that have been missed. They need to catch up on shared experiences, but they do not need to catch up on education. The child's right to play is so important, and children need to be able to play in a way in which they can access a rich play diet. They need to be with their friends. They need to be away from fear and stress, and they need to be able to enjoy themselves. Welcome, Carla. Thank you for agreeing to be my guest on this week's episode of Meynell TV. I am really pleased you're here. Your life story is amazing. The work you're doing in Uganda is fantastic. You have such drive and energy. Where did that drive come from?
Oh, I don't know. I think my theory in life has always been A, to be a good person, and B, to have fun. And I think that's really where that drive comes from. When I was a teenager growing up, I needed to get a part-time job. Everyone else was working in bars and restaurants. And I thought, actually, I saw an advert to be a play worker at a local play scheme for children with disabilities. And I thought, well, that seems a lot more fun than working in a pub or a restaurant. And so off I went. And that, I suppose, was the start of playwork. And I loved it. And that's where my sort of playwork journey started. But the drive always has been to be, I say, a good person, but also just to have a lot of fun.
Cool. And then you went to university, and what was it you studied?
So I went to university and studied childhood education and culture.
Wow.
Yeah, so I never really excelled at any particular subject, but I always worked with children, and I was always interested in the wider world. I grew up in a small little village in the UK, in England, and I knew there was more out there. So that culture part of that degree really interested me, along with childhood.
So what made the transition between disability challenges down in Guildford and childhood education and culture in Leeds? Where did Uganda come into it?
Well, when I was at university, I discovered the best society in the world. I loved it. It was called Action, and it was a volunteer society.
Okay.
And basically, it was made up of a mixed bag of wonderful humans that ran volunteer projects. And the projects were for kids, for elderly people,
Okay.
and together with some friends, I ran a project called Outdoor Mix, where we took kids away for the weekend, kids connected with social services.
Hmm.
And that became my university life. And through there, I made lifelong friends. And some of those friends were heading out to Uganda over the summer, and I promised myself I wouldn't do that until I finished university, because I knew once I started traveling, that was me done, never to return again. But I thought, oh, I can't not. And I also met Tom, who's my now husband and the
Okay.
other founder of East African Playgrounds. And he was going out to Tanzania that summer to build a playground. He'd been out the year prior, and he was going to build a playground because he really saw the lack of exciting opportunities for children to have at this boarding school that he was working in rural Tanzania. So he was heading back out to Uganda, and I thought to Tanzania, sorry. And I thought, you know what, I've got to travel, I've got to go. There was an opportunity to go to Uganda on a volunteer project, so off I went. And that summer I spent 2 months in Uganda and then travelled East Africa, and I just had the best time. I really enjoyed the culture, the people, just everything that Uganda has to offer. I really, really loved. And my work with challenges kind of came into play when we were in communities where there was no common language. And so it really brought home to me why play is so important, because you don't need a common language, because play is your common language. So I would spend evenings playing with adults and children, just hanging out, having fun, and no real connected language together. So Tom was in Tanzania building a playground. I was in Uganda having a great time volunteering. And I told lots of people about what Tom was doing, building this playground, because I thought it was fantastic. And obviously coming from a childhood studies background and playwork, I thought that was a real valid thing to be doing. So I told loads and loads of people about it. Tom and I met up in Tanzania, in Zanzibar, and we shared all of our amazing experiences, and thought, possibly we could do this again. Came back to the UK and just were inundated by requests for playgrounds.
From East Africa?
Yeah, from East Africa. And so that was kind of the beginning of East African Playgrounds.
When you say you came back and you were inundated with requests, what do you mean? This is people who you met on your travels who are now contacting you via email and saying, can you do this and can you do that?
Yeah, exactly. So as we'd sort of traveled around, I'd sort of told lots of people about what Tom was doing, and we sort of shared contact details. And because it's such a unique idea, I mean in Uganda, everywhere in the world, but children play, free play is all over the place. Children are everywhere. You can't help but look out the window and see a kid running down the road with a tire and a stick, or a kid up a mango tree, or kids free play everywhere, and it's absolutely fabulous, their rich culture of play. But having that dedicated space to say childhood is important, play is important, doesn't really exist in Uganda. Playgrounds aren't really a thing. And so the idea of schools having, in particular it was schools having this dedicated space, was really important. So it was mainly NGOs, charities that got in touch to ask if we were thinking about doing it again.
I like what you just said. I like the recognition that play exists and children will play anywhere, but that if there is a space that's dedicated to children's play, it raises a message about the importance of children's play. I think that's really a really good way of looking at it.
Mm.
Uganda became your base rather than Tanzania. You married Tom, and you've carried on building playgrounds ever since. And
Yeah.
that's a 10-year story. And you've built how many playgrounds now?
Over 350 playgrounds across Uganda now.
That across the whole width and breadth
Yeah.
of Uganda.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So 350 playgrounds is amazing, and what an achievement for 10 years. But now you're talking about the next 10 years and getting into another 10 countries. So can you tell me more about that, please?
Yeah, certainly. So what we've achieved in Uganda is fantastic, and it's a really it's a very well thought out program in terms of all of our local team, local resources, and all the additional programs that we run alongside building playgrounds. It's a really unique thing that's happening, and so there is demand across the world, I guess, for our types of programs. So we are looking to work in 10 new countries in the next 10 years. So that's not going to be a new country every single year. Life doesn't work quite like that. But at the moment, we're looking at Tanzania, Kenya, and Ghana to expand, and they'll all probably look slightly different because the need will be different. But yeah, it's an exciting new vision to be working towards.
It's amazing. What can viewers of Meynell TV do to help?
Oh, what could you do to help? Well, we have all sorts of different activities that supporters can get involved in, and we do run volunteer projects, obviously not this summer, in Uganda. So if people were interested in coming out to Uganda, they could do so. It would be amazing to have some playworkers out in Uganda too. But currently we've got a quest to Biddy Biddy going, which is a whole heap of fun. And it is a virtual fundraising event where you, as teams, can travel from the UK to Uganda. Biddy Biddy is the refugee settlement that we've been working a lot in Uganda after the issues in South Sudan. So it's a fundraising adventure where you go from the UK to Uganda, and you do that through running, walking, cycling, yoga, gardening. All these things add up to miles, and we have challenges. Every country you hit, you get a different challenge, which all have a good, strong play theme and are very entertaining. And the fundraising comes in because you can get your friends to piggyback you for some extra miles by giving donations. So people can get involved by joining our quest to Biddy Biddy.
And all of that information is on your website, and the details will follow at the end of the interview. Carla, thank you so very, very, very much for being my guest today and telling us about your life, your journey, and the work of East African Playgrounds. Thank you very much, and bye.
Bye. Thank you, Meynell.
Now come with me as we go for the final time in this series across to the big chair for today's Playwork story. This week's story, A King's Tale, was written by Charlotte McKeon when she was working in West Sussex. Charlotte, will you help us? Ethan, Sophie, Oscar, Kimberly, Ella all shouted at me. Can you help us make a den? Of course I said yes, and helped them. Next thing, they'd all run off into different directions, shouting what they would be getting inside the den. I'll get the blankets, I'll get the pegs, I'll get the stairgate. All the equipment was laid at my feet, with the 5 children all bouncing and jumping around. What are we going to do? Questions were being fired at me. So I called out to the children, hold on. You guys tell me. Suddenly all the children huddled in a little group, whispering, planning and plotting. I couldn't hear exactly what was being said. Right, this is our plan. And suddenly all the children started shouting out their ideas to me. Their enthusiasm was outstanding, and the effort of planning their ideas was excellent.
We had ideas of fetching large bleachers from outside and building them up to hold the den up, gluing the material to the side of the room with super strong glue, using hammers and nails to hold the den up. Sophie then came up with the plan of pegging the material up to the washing line, used for pegging up wet pictures. Oscar came up with a plan of then adding more string to make washing lines to hold the den up. All the children loved this. Good idea, mate. Yeah, good idea. So there I was, then building more washing lines for the children to create their den. It worked. I stood on a chair and heaved the material over the washing lines, and the children each lifted to and pegged this material to the washing lines and the stairgate. We were groaning and moaning and making funny heaving sounds. We were like the Chuckle Brothers. To me, to you, to me, to you. It was very funny. It was great fun working out how to get this large blanket over the string and to make the den to not be baggy. We had done it. As a team, we created this huge den for imaginations to go wild, and boy, did they go wild. After I had helped them, I was ushered out of the den, but I was still able to hear the story. The den had turned into a castle, and the extra blankets were used as beds. The social order was put in place: who was the king, the queen, the knights, the prince, the princess. But then it got bad. A war had broken out, and the king had to be called to war, and food was in short supply in the kingdom. The knights had to fight with the king, and the princesses had to travel with the servants to fetch food, and the queen was having a baby. The story went on for much longer, and the role play continued for the whole afternoon. The imagination of these children were remarkable, with only a small supply of materials needed to let them be as creative as they wished to play. Playwork is about supporting the children to do what they want to do. The playworker is a resource. The children get to use that resource to support their play. At no point did Charlotte tell them what they were doing. She was working as their tool in the service of the child. We must remember that the playworker is there for the child and their play. The playworker is there in service of the child. What we do is about them, and when the children have the opportunity to do what they want to do, as in this story, imaginations run wild and whole new lands and adventures are waiting to take place. Please remember that and be the most excellent playworker that you can be. I hope you enjoyed watching this week's episode of Meynell TV. A huge thank you to Carla Gill for being our guest this week. So much energy, so much excitement, and we all need to give a little bit of support to East African playgrounds. Do remember to use the hashtag MeynellTV across all our social media platforms, and as always, like, subscribe and comment in the box below. This is the final episode in Series 1, and we will be back in September for Series 2. Watch again on our social media so you'll know when the next series starts. Thank you for watching. Please do get your feedback to me. Bye! I can't do it in a high-pitched voice.